Hey, you crazy cats! 42's live streams and videos are simply not available on vinyl. You will have to go to the YouTubes for that. So if you want content about British traditions and culture, cutting edge social commentary from an unapologetically patriotic perspective, along with a side order of madness you simply will not find anywhere else, then this is the place for you. And to all those early adapters in the chat, don't forget to hit the notification bell. That's how you get the good stuff and make sure you never miss a tasty treat. So with that being said and done, squeeze yourself in. Let's get into it. You know you want to. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Please delete as applicable because the internet is worldwide and time zones are indeed still a thing. Can I get a wee audio check in the chat, please? Let me know everybody's hearing me and I'll say some hellos. Gavin Sandwich is first in. What about you, chum? Glad to have you here. Steve, Mr. Maud, you could end up being a little bit busy tonight. October, what about you, chum? Glad to have you aboard, brother. Streaky Bacon, what about you? Samson Communion sent me. It's well done, mate. Streaky. Wolfie's in. Yes, here we are. We're all here again. Yes, the cats. We've got the cool cats in the stream. It's a duck. Quack, quack. Yes, early adapter. Person who gets to the stream early and actually gets to see the intro. Or finds the stream before we become mainstream. And everybody knows where about us. Exile Fagging, what about you, chum? Lumi was seeing you. Scott's Armour, welcome aboard, son. Mate, glad to see you. Amanda Lee. Tours in. Rags, tell me you've got good audio. Thank you, mate. Tour saying good audio. Wolfie saying House of Babushka. Glad to have you. This is where I start to forget who I've said hello to and who I haven't. Might be saying hello to Gammon Sandwich for a second time. Apologies. Mandalay, Scott's Armour. That's round about everybody. And before we get started, we'll do a little bit of housekeeping. Very warm welcome to everyone who arrived from Sansom and Toffee stream earlier, who is keeping us slot warm for Bonnie Lad News. So if you came from there, very glad to have you. Welcome aboard. And if you watch my stuff on a Saturday night and you don't watch whatever's going on with them earlier on, you're probably missing out because if you like my stuff, you'll also like their stuff. A little bit. Who else have we got coming up? Ragnar Arnspear is streaming tomorrow evening. And yeah, 7 p.m. Regs and Jack will be discussing the week's news. Regs, you no guest this week. I'm guessing that. So it's just Jack and Regs, but it'll still be a good show. Our friend John Davison, you can always catch him on a Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday evening at 9 p.m. And the other one I like to give a shout out to is Dave's Waffle House. He does a show, I think he's every day now, or most days, starts at somewhere around 3 o'clock. Could be 3, could be 3:15. He does an hour to 2 hours, and he has a really good interaction with the chat. It's a good wee show. You'd probably enjoy that if you like my stuff. And that's about all the shout-outs. Ragnar saying, Rags is saying that he's no guest booked in, and he may do a call on about the news. So if you want to get involved with that, you know where it is, over at Rags' stream tomorrow evening at the normal time. He is indeed. Well, to be fair, the show is called 420 Coffee and Waffles, so I think it's written into the script. That's the only thing, but he's still a good lad, and it's a good show. Well, Wookie's in. Martin W., I don't think I got to say hello to you. Good evening, sir. Toffee's in. What about you, chum? Glad to have you aboard. Bass, who are you? I am 42. Steve Craig's got the link in there for Dave's Waffle House. Billy Blogs. Yeah, I did say hello to you. Amanda Lee is hoping not to be misgendered. We'll try to avoid any of that misgendering stuff here. It gets a bit easier whenever there's only 3 genders. You have male, female, and attack helicopters. All the rest are made the fuck up. And see, so that's pretty much all of that. Now, we're going to enter a very thorny subject. We're going to be talking this evening about the Plantation of Ireland, or well, no, the Plantation of Ulster. And I'm going to take you through the history of it. The reason why I've eventually decided to get into this subject is because I have seen a lot of people on our side talking about how based the people in the Republic of Ireland are. Yes, Billy Blogs is correct. And the answer to the ultimate question in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Oh, we've a lot to get through before we get to the Earls fucking off. A hell of a lot. But yes, I've seen a lot of stuff from people on our side talking about their Irish brothers and sisters and cousins and all that sort of thing, talking about how based the Irish are because all of a sudden they woke up and they don't want immigration. And I'm seeing a lot of, and also hearing talk about we should join up with them. And it's also being called the new Plantation of Ireland. Now, I will say here very categorically, I like Dave Cullen. I listen to his stuff. I think he's a good lad. But I will say that, see if the people in Ireland actually wanted anything to do with the people from Britain, they would not be using the term plantation. Because while I get that a lot of people in Britain don't really know the proper history of Ireland, these people have been taught it. And, well, we've been taught a bastardized version of it. But they also know that the term plantation is very emotive. And if they wanted assistance from people, they would not be calling it the plantation, and they would not be talking about planters. So Dave looks like Dangerfield's brother. That he does. So this is why I've wanted to unfurl this topic. The general narrative is that the only reason there is British people in Ireland is because of the plantation. And had we not had the plantation, they would all be busy having their nice Celtic life with no interference, and that Ireland has always been. Oh, Dave's Waffle House, that is. So then what about you, Sean? Glad to see you back. I think you've been busy. Edmonton, I think I said hello to you. So, with that being said, let's get into the actual history of Ireland and begin proving how the narrative of a plantation not being the reason why there's British people in Ireland is indeed a myth and has been made up. So let's start at the very beginning of the history of Ireland. Well, the history of the habitated history of Ireland. So here we go. Ireland was first inhabited around 7,500 BC by settlers that probably came from Scotland to the area now known as County Antrim, Northern Ireland. These early mythological... I'm going to struggle with these terms, by the way. Mesolithic, Middle Age, Stone Age, much easier for me to say, were primitive hunters and fishermen. They settled in the coasts of the larger river valleys, on the coast in the larger river valleys, especially in the northern half of the island. Although archaeological remains of their settlements have been found as far south as County Cork. However, the most extraordinary Mesolithic site is at Mount Sandel, County Londonderry, which has been dated to 5,935 BC. Its excavated structures are the oldest discovered human inhabitants in Europe, and that is from A Short History of Ireland by Richard Killeen. If anybody wants a good, quick reference, thank you, Billy, Mesolithic. If anybody wants a good, brief, short history of Ireland with all the important bits and pieces, I would highly recommend that book. And I got to type that out and create that because it's one of those things where there just wasn't a good quote on the Tinternet. And with that, we will move to our next slide. Which is a timeline of habitation in Ireland. And whenever I pick this up, I'm going to talk about them. I'm going back and check the chat. Share screen. Right, to say Mount Sandel Fort was a playground for them as children. Right. No, it's actually County Londonderry. But having said that, there has been name changes throughout the years, but it's County Londonderry. Right, I think. sorry. That's okay. It's all good, Willow. I've just got my fucking spiky pointy thing on here because this stuff begins to get my goat. Let's see. That's looking a little bit small on the screen. I'm going to make this a little bit larger. Let's see. I'm going to have to still zoom that in. Right, that'll do. If we go down our timeline, we have 7,000 BC, first settlers arrived from Scotland. 6,000 2,900 few years later, the Mount Sandel habitations. 3,500 farming arrived from Argyll. We've got Neolithic settlements and burial mounds in Mayo, Derry. Then at 2,300 BC, we have Newgrange. 2,700, we have the Giant's Ring, Shaw's Bridge, Belfast, which is similar, and I'm going to start going through some of this stuff. So it's the first. Oh, interesting stuff. Big Dublin coming up soon as well. No worries, Steve. All the best, and thanks for dropping in. Right, so we got our first bit of content that I have not created. By the way, I had the joyful event of Selena making these timelines. It was great fun. But, right. Now my Mount Sandal thing is not working, but let's see if we can get this. Ha. Right. So we'll start to talk a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about Mount Sandal, and this is to show actual evidence of habitation at different times. I'm going to zoom this in a little bit. Mount Sandal lies in a high bluff overlooking the River Bann, and as the remains of a small collection of huts provide evidence of the first people who lived in what is now Ireland. The County Londonderry site of Mount Sandal is named for its Iron Age fort site, believed by some to be Kilsastron or Killisennel, famous in Irish history as the residence of the marauding Norman king John de Courcy in the 12th century AD. But the small archaeological site east to the remains of the fort is of far greater importance to the prehistory of Western Europe. So there is a big fort there that Rags was playing in. There's a older, more important bit beside it because it is probably the earliest inhabited dwellings that have been excavated. The Mesolithic site at Mount Sandal was excavated during the 1970s by Peter Woodman of University College Cork. Woodman found evidence of up to 7 structures, at least 4 of which may represent buildings. 6 of the structures are circular huts of 6 meters, about 19 feet across, with a central interior hearth. The 7th structure is smaller and only 3 meters in diameter, about 6 feet, with an exterior hearth. The huts were made of bent saplings inserted into the ground in a circle and then covered over, probably with deer hide. So this is the first people that are living and making huts in Ireland. I'm not sure what year the famine was, but it's not going to be in this because it is post-plantation. What I'm wanting to do is run from the start of habitation in Ireland up to the Plantation of Ulster, and we can make a decision on whether or not there actually was a plantation. Because I believe I've got all the evidence to say that there was no such fucking thing. There was possibly a bit of migration between people who were similar, but there was not an actual plantation. So if we go back to our we go back to our timeline. No, we're not going back to our timeline just at the moment because I will, but it's going to take a second. 1 second, people. Right. Right. Present. Share screen. Right. So we'll give you actual evidence of that. There are settlers right from the next. So what you have from them was people living about Ireland, doing stuff. Around 3,500, things started to change a bit. We had a new wave of people coming from Scotland, from Argyll, bringing with them methods of farming. On a clear day, you can see Scotland from Ulster, and this is why there has always been a plethora of people moving. Between 3,500, we start to see Neolithic settlements and burial mounds in Belder, County Mayo. But the most important bit would be the most important site up to this state would be Newgrange, which dates to 2300 BC. And we're going to look a little bit at Newgrange. And here we go. Go to page. Zoom this in. I'm going to zoom out again. So there's a picture of Newgrange. Sorry, just want to check that. No, the Romans were not a thing yet. The Romans, it'll be a long while before we have Romans about at that. And we have people living in Ireland who were neither Roman nor Celtic. Wonder who they could have been. Wonder how we would describe those people that started off in Scotland and came to Ireland. Definitely not Celtic. Right, sorry. I thought I had to share it, but didn't. There we go. There's a picture of Newgrange. This dates to 2300 BC. It's a large passage tomb. You can see where these people are sort of standing at one end. There's a passage goes straight away through to the other, and then it's all been covered over with earth. We're going to talk a little bit more about it in a minute, but for now, I need to check the chat. Before countdown. No chatter man involved. Oh, I do not use BCE. Slims all over. Oh, in the early 17th century, no, I don't think that many of them actually came over. Right. So here we go. We're looking at Newgrange. Newgrange is a 5,200-year-old passage tomb located in the Boyne Valley in Ireland's ancient east. The Boyne Valley was comparable to Ireland's Valley of the Kings. Newgrange was built by Stone Age farmers. The mound is 85 metres, 279 feet in diameter, and 13 metres, 43 feet high, on an area of about 1 acre. The passage measures 19 metres, 62 feet, and leads into a chamber with 3 alcoves. The passage of the chamber are aligned with the rising sun on the morning around winter solstice. So similar with Stonehenge, where you have on summer solstice the sun rising and looking through the gates. In this thing, what happens is on winter solstice, the sun rises and it catches the passage just right, and it illuminates the passage and the alcoves off to the two sides. Newgrange is surrounded by 79 large stones called curbstones, some of which are engraved with Neolithic art. The most striking is the entrance tomb. Access to Newgrange monument is via the Brú na Bóinne, the visitor centre. Yeah, because we can't have people just going into these places. We've got to make them pay. We've got to restrict when they can go. And there's a 15 or 16-year waiting list to actually go on winter solstice. However, there are another couple of similar sites in the area that you can hop over a fence and visit for free and get the same effect of the passages being illuminated by the sunlight. But you didn't hear. Please don't do that. That's wrong. You're not allowed to do that. You're not supposed to do that. And if you want to see a passage tomb being illuminated by the sun, don't be going and doing that. Newgrange is a Stone Age Neolithic monument in the Boyne Valley, County Meath, and is a jewel in the crown of Ireland's ancient east. Newgrange was constructed about 5,200 years ago, 3,200 BC, which makes it older than Stonehenge and the Great Pyramids of Gaza. Newgrange has a large passage, circular mound, 85 metres, 279 in diameter, and 13 metres, 43 feet high, and 19 metres, 63 feet, stone passageway with chambers inside. The mound is ringed by 97 large curbs, of some of which. Did I read that twice? Sorry. Newgrange was built by a farming community that prospered on the rich lands of the Boyne Valley, Knowth and Douth, and similar mounds that together with Newgrange have been designated a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. In other words, UNESCO has come in and put a fucking book of rules on them. Thank you for fuck all, UNESCO. Archaeologists classified Newgrange as a passage tomb. However, Newgrange is now reconsidered to be of much more than a passage tomb. Ancient temple is more fitting classification, a piece of archaeological, spiritual, religious, and ceremonial importance, much as present-day cathedrals and places of prestige and worship are, where dignitaries may be laid to rest. Newgrange is a large kidney stone-shaped mound covering with an area of 1 acre, retained at the base by 97 curbstones. Fuck me, they are repeating themselves quite a lot. Some of which are richly decorated with megalithic art. The 19-metre long inner passage. There's 11 o'clock. The 19-metre long inner passage leads to a cruciform chamber with a cobbled roof. The amount of time and labour invested in construction of Newgrange suggests a well-organised society with specialised groups responsible for different aspects of construction. Newgrange is part of a complex of monuments built along the bend of the River Boyne, known collectively as Brú na Boyne, and the other two principal monuments are Noath, the largest, and Douth, but throughout the area there are as many as 35 smaller mounds, which leads me to say it is Ireland's Valley of the Kings. This is where the important people went to get buried from across Ireland. Well, thank you, kind sir. Fully intact, chum. Never plundered, never ruined. I was going to go down, but then I found out there was an 18-year waiting list to actually go on the day where it actually works. Sorry, I'm just checking through the chat. Yes, Regs, hit that like button for me, please. 42. They knew about the procession of the Anglos too. Do you know about that stuff? I know that one's 21st of June and one's 21st of December, but that's pretty much my height on that. Right. Now, the next place I want to have a look at is the Giant's Ring, which is at Shaw's Bridge in Belfast. Because there are striking similarities. Sure. Let's see, how's this working on StreamYard? I might need to yeah, this needs soon to fuck in. Right, there's a picture of the Giant's Ring. You can see some stones here in the middle, and these are earthenwork walls around the outside. The Giant's Ring is a Neolithic henge monument predating the Egyptian pyramids and is situated in the townland of Balkanally, only 4 miles from Belfast city centre. The Giant's Ring at once excites the interest of the visitor by reason of antiquity and mystery with which it is surrounded. We do not envy the individual who can walk unimpressed around the rampart or stand beside its cromwell, that's those stones, without the feeling of astonishment and awe. It is an epic poem in clay and stone, appealing alike to the imagination of the heart, not alone to be enthusiastic and antiquarian, but for every lover of our native land. That was the Reverend Gav Burke building the ring. The huge circular earthwork is 590 feet in diameter and covers an area of 6.9 acres. The 11-foot high banks, though originally they were much higher, are composed of soil and stones and dug from the interior ditch within the boundary of the circle. The earthworks enclosure is broken up by 5 irregularly spaced gaps within the ring banks, block out any view of the surrounding landscape. Only the sky is visible. Just east of the centre is a small cairn of Comith. This is composed of 5 upright stones with 2 large capstones. The vestibule passage faces west. These passage tombs are common throughout Ireland. So there you have a close-up view of the standing stones and the capstones. And what I can say is what said there is true. If you're at these stones and standing and you look any direction you want, you cannot see well, you can see the trees obviously because they stick up, but you can't see any buildings. You can't see Belfast. It does a very good job of enclosing you and keeping you within this area. Unlike Newgrange, I've visited this many times. I've climbed on this, stone at the back, and lay on that capstone, which is part of the reason why it's in here. A scientific study carried out in 1954 proposed that the inner wall of the earthworks may at one time have been faced with stone, which suggests that the Giant's Ring was not built for defensive purposes, as the stone walls and ditch would have been on the outer edges of the circle. It is thought that the Giant's Ring may have been designed as a large meeting place. It is situated close to a natural fording point in the River Lagan. This site has been used as a crossing point since ancient times and is now spanned by Shaw's Bridge. Another theory put forward is the archaeologist Michael J. O'Kelly is that the site was based around the cult of the dead. The Neolithic tribes had a great veneration for the departed. The cairn was possibly a burial chamber of a revered chieftain, and the ring and circle used to host games or funeral rites in his honour. The Giant's Ring should therefore be seen as a focus of the community ceremony of death rituals of the late Neolithic and early Bronze Age in the Lagan Valley. So my point about this is where we have Newgrange and we have the Giant's Ring, and these things are dotted right across Ireland. They're obviously built by the same people. It's not, at this point in Ireland, we have a uniform society right across the island. Yes, like the Bacons. So I'm just checking through the comments. It does. It does almost look like a Picasso. Yes. Strange that there would be similar stone things in Scotland that there are in Ireland, dating from the same period, because it was the same peoples. Yep. Mainland UK. They're all over Scotland and mainland UK, and because they were left here by this, they were left here by the same people. There's not enough death rituals. If you want me, I agree. We are losing our death rituals. We're brothers and sisters. We are all one. Yeah, until outsiders arrived, I would say. Now, with that, we're going to go and have another. Actually, it's not surprising that in times past, the ancient Commonwealth was considered to be a pagan altar, perhaps even a place of sacrifice. It's also used for sporting venue. So I think that's all we need to know about that. I think we've done enough. That was, yeah, chucking the dead in the bog is a very traditional way for the Irish Republican Army to get rid of the people they've murdered. Right. So with that, I want to go back to our timeline. So here we go. So we started 7000 BC. We did Mount Sandel farmers. We did Newgrange. 2700 BC. Shaw's Bridge. At 2000 BC, we have Bronze Age metalwork and decorative jewelry. And at 500 to 250 BC, we have bumpity bump. The Celts arrive in waves, the largest and most successful being the O'Neills, who arrive around 250 BC. I'm going to repeat this. The Celts are arriving here between 500 and 250 BC. We seem to have a lot of stuff that a lot of people have done and left. Yes, the O'Neills, spelt with a U, became the O'Neills. Who is writing history? That is quite the question, because a lot of it's being rewritten, which is why I would advise everybody to make friends with a second-hand bookstore and buy written material, because this is changing. They don't have exact dates. They have, most of them will be dates between this time and this time. But I think you will all agree that there's quite a bit of habitation in Ireland, evidence of habitation in Ireland, connected to Scotland, connected to the mainland UK, that happened before the Celts arrived. And I honestly have no idea. Patrick was from Wales, but the fucker was never a saint. I'll never get tired of saying that. Right, sorry, I'm trying to catch up with comments. Well, see, Christianity only began at the year 0 with the birth of Christ. Actually, that would be good, because if you're on night archive site, they're not being changed. That would be quite the fucking resource. October. Right. Hold on. Right. And just so as I source everything, as you well know. So I'm going to pull up a link for the arrival of the Celts with a date on it, that you can. Oh, here's a really interesting one. In 1994, when Richard Killeen wrote his book, the date for the arrival of the Celts was 250 BC. Then by 2012, it was 500 to 250 BC. And it's creeping earlier and earlier. It's almost as if people keep proving that there's a long history in Ireland of the Celts not being here and them trying to squeeze the date further and further. Right, I'll try to explain this. Willow Wiki. The Ulster Protestant will become this, but the British people who happen to be Protestant in Ulster are the people that built all this shit from 7000 BC. Well, they are the descendants of the people that built all the stuff from 7000 BC to 500 BC, whenever there was no Celts in the place. And I would say that they were British, not Protestant, because, first of all, Protestant Christianity hadn't arrived. They were Druids, but they were people that were connected to people from mainly Scotland, but also the rest of the what we now call the United Kingdom. So, evening, RPI. Thanks for dropping in, chum. Right, so we're going to the Celts arriving in Ireland with a checkable source and what we're told about the Celts arriving. Just let me see this in StreamYard. That is very small. So we will do our zooming in. So we'll zoom out on again. Before the arrival of Christianity in Ireland, there was no actual written history, which is true. So it's very unclear exactly when the Celtic culture arrived in Ireland. The first sign of any Celtic influence to reach Ireland dates between 800 BC and 400 BC. I'm quite sure that my date of 500 BC is between those two dates. So, right, a couple of years, give or take. So, and this is coming from your Irish culture. I just wanted something that somebody could look up on a link to check things out if they wished to do so. One second. I do find it a bit confusing at this later. They weren't black though. No, they were definitely not black. Nothing. Well, the football teams had something to do with them because Celtic named themselves after them. Yes, and we were all very tribal at this point. Right. So that's the Celts arriving. And the next important event in Ireland would be Black Pig Dyke. Right. Present this. No. No, they were not black, they were white. It's not that type of pig. Unfortunately not. No Northwest 200. Willow Wookie, I'm going to let you into a secret. They fucking invented Cheddar Man. It's a fake. It's a fraud. It's another bit of invented history. It's another bit of invented science, much along the same lines of where a man can be a woman can be a man, anybody can be anything. White people can be black. If you use enough mental gymnastics, you can get to there. Right, so what is Black Pig Dyke? We are going to have to zoom this in. Album on home. You want the home page, please? Thank you. What the hell's going on? Right. If you can see this picture here, this is an earthenwork known as a defensive line, where you have a trench and a steep rise out the other side, which leads to another trench and creates a defendable position. So, what is this madness? Runs through 9 counties. "2,000 of these earthworks appear to date from the late Iron Age in Ireland over 2,000 years ago. Early tastes give a date range between 90 AD and 420 AD. Black Pig Dyke appears in 9 counties: Armagh, Cavan, Donegal, Down, Fermanagh, Leitrim, Longford, Monaghan and Roscommon. One of the longest surviving ditches of the Black Pig Dyke can be found in County Longford, which extends for 10.3 kilometres between Lough Keele and Guana. The earthworks could be quite large. One section in Cavan at Alkilmore has a rampart or an earthworks bank standing 2 metres high and 2.7 metres wide. The accompanying ditch was 1.3 metres deep and 4.3 wide. So to get the depth that you have to clamber over it in order to attack anybody, you add the depth that they're dug down and the amount that they're built up. And if we go to what is it? Yeah, what are these strange earthworks? Etched across the landscape of much of Ireland and Britain are lengths of banks and ditches bearing evocative names like Scots Dyke, Grim Ditch, the Cattle Ditch, translated into the Black Wall, and Daniel's Cast. Archaeologists prefer to describe them as linear earthworks, or sometimes travelling earthworks, dykes, or ranch boundaries. And it is in Britain and Ireland that the most extensive and oldest examples of these dykes in Europe can be found. Around a dozen individual linear earthworks that occur across the width of the North Midlands and South Ulster have been grouped together as the Black Pig Dyke. The name comes from a folk tradition that the earthworks were torn from the landscape by an angry, masquerading giant mythical schoolteacher turned pig. Another somewhat fantastical, its interpretation, which developed in the early 20th century, is that it is the remains of a once unified territorial boundary for Ulster, the Great Wall of Ulidia, suggesting that the people of Ulster were always culturally separate and distinct from the rest of the Irish. Because that is so much more, that is so much less logical than a angry, marauding, giant, mystical schoolteacher turned pig. The fact that it might be defensive borders around Ulster are ludicrous compared to that. As the time research is going on, this explanation is looking less and less likely. Nevertheless, the fusion of myth and politics has attracted writers like James Joyce of Finnegan's Wake, W.B. Yeats, The Folly of the Black Pig, and Vincent Woods at Black Pig's Dyke, all of whom have imagined the dyke as a symbol of the complexities of Irish identities. So there you go. And if you can see this on, right, I'm going to zoom this in a bit more and move it about a bit. These yellow lines here that go across and then double back, forming a second line, that's where these defences are. And people are confused as to what they are. Now, if we go back to our timeline, let's have a look. 7000 BC, first settlers. 6900 Mount Salnos. We've got farming 3500. We've got Neolithic settlements 2700. We've got the Giant's Ring. We've got Bronze Age metalwork. We've got between 500 and 250 BC. The Celts arrive in waves. The largest, most successful being the New Needles. And at 90 BC, we've got the beginning of the construction of Black Pig Dyke. The newest one was built in 420 AD. Celts arrive, earthenwork defences arrive, and not long after the last one in 320, Claudius is sent to Ireland by Pope Clemenstine to minister to the Scoti who believe in Christ. Obviously, it couldn't be that an invading army arrived and all of a sudden they needed to build earthenworks. That would make no fucking sense whatsoever. And it would not be evidence that for 6,000 years, the people of Ulster and indeed the people of Ireland lived a distinctly different life from the Celts who were in fucking Central Europe. And I put it to you that Ireland was not always a Celtic country. And with that, I'm going to have a quick look in the chat. Sanson thinks it was a school teacher. You see them all the time now with nose rings, blue hair, and rainbow flags. Fortifications of communal communities, i.e., tribal defences. Yet the historians are the ones skeptical. Well, you see, here's the thing, Philip. If you start off wanting to find a answer, and the answer has to be what they're after, you need to make shit up. I'm sorry, but that's just how it goes. My point exactly, Willie Wookie. Yeah, I do get a little bit emotional at times. So there you go. Now, as we continue on, oops, I'm back. That the Normans are coming in a while, and your people, the Vikings, are coming. So we're going to move on to our next timeline. And I have to get this up. Uh, 1 second. Where? Right. Timeline 2. Right. One momento. I can get rid of that one. Present. Share screen. Share screen. Right. Our next timeline looks like this. So we're starting off where we were, Claudius being sent by Pope Killeen, not to be confused with Patrick, not a saint, who came a little bit after that. But I would say to you that the Pope sending over someone to minister to the Christians in Ireland would say that there has been at least a modicum or a semblance of peace has arrived in the area that he's sending his minister into. 790 AD or 795 AD, Viking raiders arrive in Ireland. 1014, we have the Battle of Clontarf. And then somebody's asking about the Normans. They arrived at 1169. So, what I'm going to say, from this period on in, from round about 430 AD, when Claudius arrives, from here on, Irish history gets strange because the people who had occupied the land for 7,000 years left evidence in our form of archaeology are rarely spoken of, if spoken of at all. There is no mention of any great battles where they were annihilated or some natural disaster that removed them. They're simply not put on the record. The one account we have of a battle between the indigenous people and the Celts is over the body of Patrick, not a saint, in 461 AD, where Patrick died. The legend is that his body was put on the back of a donkey, sent into the wilderness, found by, or not necessarily found, but there was a clash between the O'Neills and the Uledi, who would have been the indigenous people of that area. And both the warring factions wanted the body. They wanted to claim the body because they had been Christianized by the stage. But they had some form of a truce because either A, they were not able to forge a river with the body and they didn't want it getting destroyed. So they decided not to fight. Or they got lost in the fog or something. It's all very weird and strange. But that's the only real mention there is of battles between these people. What can be inferred from this point that there was a battle for control of Ulster, and that it was waged at times in terms of trying to gather influence, and at other times an actual battlefield between the two factions. It is also clear that people from Scotland and people from England were in on the side of the indigenous peoples that we now call Ulster Scots. People from England and Scotland would weigh in periodically on their side. Also, the Celts brought in some Viking mercenaries from the Isle of Man for one battle, but we'll get to that. So there's either no record of all or a large amount of propaganda. I shall attempt to present the facts and filter out the truth and present my opinions, which will take us up to the 9 years war and subsequent so-called plantation. What is clear from this point is Irish history and British history are interlinked. They follow the same course. The coastal areas of both islands were attacked by Vikings. Indeed, for Ireland, this had an unexpected benefit of creating the first towns. Dublin, Wexford, Waterford, Cork, and Limerick all owe their origins to Vikings, who used them as bases from which to launch raids, either over land or via inland waterways, and that started from around 795 AD. And with that, I need to check the chat. The population of the Isle of Man was 4, but they all have 3 legs each. So I'm just checking through the chat. AlphaGo, what about you, Sean? I take repel all invaders as a better option as well, a Wookiee. This is true. Yes, the Isle of Man, the people have 3 legs, but they're cats with no tail. It all evens itself out. To be totally honest with your eggs, I have no fucking clue about the history of the Isle of Man. It's just not something I ever really worried that much about. Right, hold on. Where was it? Right, so I'm see you've got a great link. The unfortunate thing is this thing will not allow you to put it in the chat. But I am having a phone in at the end of this. If you want, if you're still about, we can talk about it then. Yeah, it took me about 20 years to fucking get all this stuff in. 20 hours to put all this stuff together, and I actually knew what I was talking about. So give it a whirl, chum, and we'll see if we can get it. So uh, so it could take a while before I get the Iron Man, but I will give it a go. Uh, yeah, I've watched some of his stuff. He calls Newgrange Celtic. That sort of threw me. Because apparently the Celts were here building stuff fucking thousands of years before they arrived. So where was I before I? Yep. By 841 AD, Dublin was founded as a Viking trading post. The Vikings and Celts battled each other, with the Vikings holding the upper hand until around 900 AD. However, the Celts also did battle against other Celts in their spare time to increase their power base. Bran Brew took control over Munster, then did battle with the southern O'Neill with the aid of fighting allies at the Battle of Coftier near Dublin in April 1014. When they routed the enemy, however, their king was killed and the dream of a high king of the island was lost. There was a theory that the Celts would produce someone with enough courage and charisma to unite all the Celts and take over not just all of Ireland but all of Britain. And they would all flock under his banner. But Brian Brew, who was close to being that person in Ireland, died in battle just outside Dublin. Into this madness marched the Normans, who took the east coast towns, displacing the Vikings. In 1171, they took Dublin. Henry II came to Dublin and received the submission not only of the Normans but also the Celtic kings, and presumably whoever was running Ulster, because they don't fucking tell us. So this Celtic period from 250 BC to 795 AD, we're talking, 500 years Celts had absolute power? Well, supposed absolute power, because they don't talk about the indigenous inhabitants. So it's a small part of time that we're based on the fact that Ireland was always a Celtic country. And what I was going to say next was we're going to have a look at a Norman building in Ulster. Present share screen. This is Grey Abbey in County Down. Along with Inch Abbey, Grey Abbey is the best example of Anglo Norman Cistercian architecture in Ulster, and was the daughter house of Holm Cothram, Cumbria. It was founded in 1183 by Africa, the wife of John de Courcy, the Anglo-Norman invader of East Ulster. Poor and decayed in the late Middle Ages, the abbey was dissolved in 1541, but in the early 17th century was granted to Sir Hugh Montgomery, and the nave was refurbished for the parish of worship until the late 18th century. The remains in this beautiful parkland, settling in the nearby Grand House of Rossmont, consent with the church and the cloister and surrounding buildings to the south. Now, the reason why I'm putting this in is to show that Ireland, like England, got Normified. They hadn't even arrived yet. So, as I said, Ireland's history and Britain's history were totally interlinked at this stage. And where was I going next? The Normans were then replaced by the Tudors, but for the peasants, it was a case of new boss, same situation. Because what would happen is the landowners would change, the peasants would stay. They would be the same people they'd always been. They would just have a new boss. The next meaningful event is the referendum and the creation of the Protestant Church in England and Ireland. This happened in 1534, and the net result was that those loyal to the king in Ireland converted to Protestantism, and those opposed to the king remained Catholic. So, if I bring our timeline back up again. Right. The Reformation happened here. It's the one before the last, 1534. And at this point, the people who you would consider to be British, it became quite easier to distinguish them between the people that considered themselves Irish and probably Celtic. 1 second, I need to cough. Right. You could tell the difference between the people who were British and those were Irish, possibly Celtic, possibly Viking, uh, because they now went to different churches. The Protestants have always been British, and the divide that we have in Ireland to this day, and in Northern Ireland to this day, of Protestants and Catholics, that was caused by the Reformation, because you had two different groups of people that wanted two different ways of life, and one became Protestant and one remained Catholic. Protestant actually means Protestant Catholic. The original Protestant church was Anglican, so and you can tell the difference between Protestant Catholic and Protestant, because Protestant Catholics still have a book of common prayer as well as a Bible, and that leads us up to the 9-Year War, which directly precedes the plantation. So the next bit of content I'm going to put up will be on the plantation itself. Boomer, boomer. I'm not sure exactly when, Slim, but it was quite a while after that. Right. Sorry, I had a bit of a boomer, and I was talking with no mic on, for fuck's sake. So the next bit we're going to talk about is the actual plantation itself. And we're going to get that from the history of Ireland. Now, before I start reading this, I would like you to bear in mind that the cultural narrative is the only reason that there is British people in Ireland at all is because of the plantation. So, for that to be actually correct, there would have needed to be no British presence prior to this event. And I think every one of you would agree that there was quite a fucking lot of British presence prior to that event. So this is from History Ireland. After the flight, the Plantation of Ulster. When the principal Ulster lords, together with almost 100 of their followers, fled the province in September 1607, they left behind a situation of some confusion. Among their own followers, the removal of the focus of local loyalties and the administrators of everyday life created a sense of despondency and even of betrayal. Some of their poets, such as Fear Farrell O'Gorman, saw the flight as its consequences as a punishment of God for their sins, for the sins of the earls. As late as the 1630s, when the chronicler Michael O'Cregan wrote an account of the flight in the annals of the Four Masters, ambivalent feelings existed about the events of September 1607. O'Cregan lamented the departure of the lords and their followers, but blamed those who had conceived and executed their scheme. The Earls himself, presumably, in an echo of arguments of the poets, O'Cregan also claimed that it was God who had not permitted the lords to remain on the lands. Right, to sum this shit up, there was a whole bunch of Celtic people who had power in Ireland who rose up against the now English rulership, and they got their asses handed to them. They fucked off, and the Indigenous people got their land back. The native the double administration were caught unawares. The native Irish were not the only ones thrown into confusion by the flight of the Earls. The double administration too was caught unawares. In the years after the surrender of O'Neill and Melfort in 1603, it had evolved into a strategy of government of Ulster that depended upon the cooperation of O'Neill and O'Donnell. So O'Neill and O'Donnell were influential, powerful people, and now they've gone. Because the people that lived in the land were after them. What had been agreed at Melfort was extraordinary 2 years earlier. In 1601, the Earl of Essex had been executed for plotting against the Queen, yet O'Neill and O'Donnell, I think this is part of the War of the Roses, by the way, I will need to check on that, who had been in the actual rebellion, were pardoned, restored to their lands, and in the case of O'Donnell, elevated to a peerage. The government hoped that they could transform the Ulster lords into peaceful local chiefs into English-style lordship who would undertake the duties of representations of the Dublin government and its localities, as had happened with their counterparts elsewhere. In this they failed. O'Neill in particular became increasingly retrensive to the restrictions being placed upon his local authority and was appointed by the Church of Ireland bishops with the jurisdiction of the efforts of the former sublords to break free from the control of the newly established common law courts. Right, I can tell you exactly what happened here. That there was a lot of corruption in Ireland. There was a new ruler came in, and he was trying to root out the corruption. The Celtic lords didn't like that because they were used to being able to shit upon the serfs, the plebs, and they rose up in rebellion, and then they got beat in the battle, and then they fucked off to France. As a result of the flight of the Earls, the Dublin administration and King James I in London faced the unexpected problem of how to govern Ulster at minimal cost. There was no shortage of advice. Those who had fought on the Elizabethan army during the 9 Years' War had fully expected that the lands of the rebels would be confiscated and parcelled out among the victors. A project for the division of the plantation of the eschewed lands of the several counties of Ulster, namely Tyrone, Coleraine, Donegal, Fermanagh, Armagh, and Cavan, concluded by His Majesty's Commissioners on the 23rd of June in 1608. The Tract of the 1599 laid out the detailed plan to develop Ireland by colonisation following the confiscation at the ends of the war. In East Ulster, where Con O'Neill's financial situation had forced him to sell much of his land to two speculators, James Houghton and Hugh Montgomery. Such collusion was well underway by the time the Earls had left Ireland. The failure to confiscate the west of Ulster land had caused considerable resentment among those who had fought in that war. One of these soldiers, Sir John Harrington, had rudely written after the war that I have lived to see the damnable rebel Tyrone brought to England, courteously received and well liked. O my lord, what is there doth not prove inconsistency in worldly matters? By the time the flight was over, one of the most important of these former soldiers, Sir Arthur Chichester, had attained the most senior position in the government of Ireland. The Lord Deputyship, and his advice was clearly influential. He had acquired the extensive lands in County Antrim and had established colonies of former soldiers there. Others had followed example in Londonderry. Sir Thomas Phillip had created similar colony in Limavady. The idea of establishing colonies of former soldiers with some new settlers, the soldiers getting priority in the allocation of confiscated property, lay at the core of Chichester's plan for Ulster in the wake of the fight. One king, one allegiance, and one law. Chichester's plan was not only advice that the king was offered, however, some who had been involved in the previous plantations, such as Richard Spew, who had been a Munster settler in the 1580s, drew up proposals that they sent to the king. John Bell, the vicar of Christ's Church in London, drew up a scheme to solve both the problem of governing Ulster and that of the poor in England by proposing that English vagrants be transported to Ireland. Neither of these schemes had much effect on decision makings. More importantly, it was advice offered by the Irish Attorney General, Sir John Davies, who set out the analysis for the Irish situation in a book published in 1612 entitled A Discovery of the True Causes Why Ireland Was Never Entirely Subdued Until the Beginning of His Majesty's Happy Reign. That's a long-ass title for a book. Unlike some contemporaries, Davies took the view that the native Irish world could be reformed and that the 9 Years' War had laid the groundwork for this process. He argued that the Anglo Norman settlement had failed because of the mistakes of the government in not extending the full rights of common law to the Irish and allowing the settlers to build up plantation lordships outside of royal control. These problems could now be solved by learning from the mistakes of the past. Thus, war would never be at an end until there was one king, one allegiance, and one law. A new society could be built in Ulster within the common law framework. Davies optimistically predicted that the settlement of Ulster would be a mixed plantation of British and Irish, and they might grow up together as one nation, with the blessing of God. It will secure the peace of Ireland, assure it to the crown of England, and whoever finally make a civil, rich, and mighty, flourishing kingdom. What you will notice in this is there's no mention of the Ulster people. And as much as I complain that the people of Ireland ignore the Ulster Scots, the English are also guilty of that. Events moved quickly amid all the flourishing. The crown assured or confiscated the lands of the earls, declaring them to have laid down their loyalty to the king by leaving the kingdom without his permission. In 1608, the local rising of Sir Carter O'Donoghue in Londonderry allowed the crown to extend the amount of land that it brought under its control. As a result, 6 of the 9 counties of the historic province of Ulster, Armagh, Cavan, Coleraine, later renamed Londonderry, Donegal, Fermanagh, and Tyrone, passed into crown hands. Through 1608, this newly acquired lands were surveyed in preparation for the settlement, but as yet, the form of settlement we take was vague. Now, what I want to clarify here, this does not mean all the land. This means the royal estates. This means the large farmhouses. That excludes 90% of the population because most of the people were serfs that lived in uh, small places, communities where they worked their own little bit of land, or they were employees, more or less slaves to the large landowners. So this affected the ordinary people exactly not at all. How the settlement was to work became clear in early 1906 with the publication of the project and the orders and conditions of the plantation scheme. Where these were revised slightly in the following year, the broad scheme remained the same. Most of the work was done in London by the Irish Committee of the Privy Council, and the loss of their records for these years means that we can never be sure about the detailed process. Lost records. What a surprise. Based on the outcomes, however, it seems that Davies rather than Chichester became the driving force behind the scheme. Chichester's constituency, the former soldiers or servites, did not fare well in the final distribution of land, achieving only 13% of the allocated land, almost the smallest portion of any group in the scheme. The publication of the plantation scheme provided fresh impetus for the project. Through 1609, a new mapping survey of Ulster was made by Sir George Bruley in presentation of the divided islands, the British project. Right, I need to go back and check the comments. Evening, Saxy, Emma G. Yeah, their treason was rising up against the crown, and then they lost the war, so they had no choice but to go. Right. No, well, to rise up and get your people to fight the crown is treason. It's some of the earliest settlement in Europe, let alone Ireland. Right. There's nothing there that really need to get involved with, but it could do with zooming this in. The Undertakers became checking, not fucking muted. The Undertakers became the mainstay of the plantation scheme. Equal numbers of Scottish and English gentry received lands on which they would plant settlers. It is difficult not to see the hand of the king in this decision. Henceforth, the Scotch and English were referred to in an official document as British. Uh, this echoed the creation of Great Britain as a result of the union of the English and Scottish crowns in 1603, with the accession of James VI to Scotland to the English throne. It also provides the first hint that the Ulster plantation was not simply an exercise in land redistribution, but an attempt to blend together different ethnic groups in Ulster and create a new society as envisaged by Sir John Davies. The government laid aside 40% of the land for those undertakers. It was divided into parcels, each one under the control of a chief undertaker. Each precinct was assigned to either English or Scottish undertakers, many of whom harboured deep suspicions of the other. Uh, Estates were divided into three classes: 2,000 acres, 1,500 acres and 1,000 acres. These allocations were much smaller than those provided for the 16th century Munster plantation, reflecting the concern of the Crown that undertakers should not become too powerful. As a result, much of Ulster land became small estates, contrasting sharply with the large estates of Hamilton, Montgomery, and the Earl of Antrim in East Ulster, and the massive land banks of the Earls in Clonfert, Cork, Ormond, and other parts of the country. Now, to get an idea of what these estates would be like and how much land they were given and how much land was not given to them, if you go to Hillsborough Castle, for example, and look at the size of Hillsborough Castle and then the amount of land that there is around it that's not Hillsborough Castle, the majority of the land was not given over to people during the plantation. The scheme required undertakers to remove native Irish and introduce settlers into the lands within 2 years. But hold on. No, they removed the Celtic lords, or they replaced them, but they didn't actually need to remove them because they had fucked off to France and to erect a castle on their holdings before 1613. They were also enjoined to live together in villages and towns, creating an important element of the scheme. 4 other groups also. See these villages and towns? Ireland was short on them. They were basically told to go build some places where people could live. The 4 other groups also received land in the plantation scheme. Some 208 native freeholders. That's going to be Ulster Scots people. Just saying. They already had freeholds. They got 14% of the skewed counties. Included here are some men who remained loyal to the Crown during the 9 Years' War, but the majority were minor figures who had risen to prominence following the removal of the top social layer of the Kilt. So the Ulster Unionists and Protestants that were being held down by the Celtic invaders actually got something. Got that. With the flight of the Earls and their followers, secondly, 57 precincts were allocated to servitors who government officials or former soldiers. These men, unlike undertakers, could employ native Irish as tenants. Right, so there was a lot of places where people who already worked the land could get to work the land. That sounds fair to me. Thirdly, the established church acquired 18% of the confiscated land to support the Church of Ireland ministry that had barely been visible in Ulster before the plantation. Provision for the clergy was one of the major challenges that the church faced in the 17th century in Ireland, since outside of Ulster, much of the church land and the right to present the livings had fallen into the hands of lay people, many of whom were Catholic. The provision of land for the church in Ulster under the plantation scheme provided a practical solution for a real problem. It was also a response to the problem of governing the province for, as one tract of 1599 noted, a strange people governed by a true religion and justice, the fruits of which are obedience and increased wealth and prosperity, shall be evermore assured unto the prince. Finally, as part of the Reformation of Ulster, 1% of the land was assigned to support schools that would not only educate the sons of the settlers, but also inoculate the rudiments of civility into the sons of the surviving natives. Oh, those rat bastards are building schools. The provision for those royal schools, although small, hinted at the planters' concern to build assured social norms through education. A similar strategy of reform through education encouraged the sons of Old English and Old Irish lords to attend Trinity College, Dublin, as well as the University of Oxford. But I will say that that's the rich people we're talking about. We're not talking about the average common person. The Crown expected the county of Killeen from these arrangements assigned to the City of London under the management of a new body called the Irish Society. This, like the Virginia Company, established at the same time to settle parts of North America. It was a joint stock company intended to attract London's merchant wealth to the plantation scheme. It was the Irish Society that built the walled city in Londonderry, by the way. In 1613, the county renamed Londonderry to reflect this new connection and was parcelled into estates of about 3,000 acres each, divided among the 12 groups of London trade guilds. The Irish Society held the rebuilt ports of Londonderry and Killeen, the main outlets of economic products in the plantation and the main ports of entry for the settlers. These two towns were the economic succession of the plantation scheme of populations of about 1,000. Oh, holy God, they brought over 1,000 people. That's woeful. Making them about the same size as the English market towns of a small range of trades. Nah, 1 second, I need to get liquid. I want to check a chat. Sorry, I'm just checking the chat. Ben, if you're talking about who changed the name from Derry to Londonderry, that would be the British. Right, we're safe to go on. It is tempting to see the Ulster arrangements as simply a wider plantation policy being pursued in Ireland in the early 17th century. Plantations had already been in nation in Wicklow, Longford, Leitrim, and West Offaly before the 1630s. Yet the Ulster scheme differed greatly to those implemented in other regions, involving more than simply landowning arrangements, although that remained an integral part of the scheme. The Ulster scheme presented a unique, coherent blueprint for an evolving Ulster society. Thus, it is not only specified that the settlers would be introduced, but also laid down the numbers of settlers who were to hold lands by particular types of tenanture, stipulating the numbers of freeholders, leaseholders, tenants at will to be created on each estate. Thus, the settlement set out an entirely new social structure, detailing the differing relationship for settlers and their landlords, ultimately the king, who drew contemporary Scottish analogy, which may have been in the mind of the king. The Ulster settlement was more like the arrangements for the Highland Society set out in 1608, Status of Iona, which regulated the social relationships of the plantations of Lewis. The Ulster settlement went even further than that, since it did not simply create new social relationships, but also established a framework within which they could work. Estates were erected into manors with their own courts to resolve local disputes. Market courts facilitated the growth of trade and the structures of a parish government, especially the Firstry, provided a local government network. So they're bringing in rules and law and order and towns to a population that were majority British and had been. So I'm struggling to see what the problem is. In addition, the normal machinery for common law, with its quarter sessions and assizes, provided places where people would meet and see the authority of the king manifest in legal proceedings. In this way, local identities in time might overcome religious and ethnic animosities. because we're going to treat everybody equally. Such courts and markets in Sir John Davies's vision provided forums where the Scottish, English, and Irish might grow into one nation through trade and law. There are even hints that by 1640 this might have been taking place. Ulster Catholics served as church wardens in the Church of Ireland parishes, and they interacted with settlers at various legal courts. The fact that Sir Phelim O'Neill forged the Royal Commission in 1641 suggests that many of the Ulster Irish were well acquainted with the trappings of royal government, such as seals and charters by that date. The Ulster plantation scheme was as much about social engineering as it was about redistributing the land. In other words, they tried to create peace. The Ulster plantation involved the foundation of new plantation towns such as Ballygally in County Londonderry. Yet, for all these hints of the Ulster scheme's progression, more substantial evidence exists that the questions its effectiveness. The surveys of the plantation scheme in 1611, 1615, 1619, 1622 brought reports of short-term failure and discontent among the settlers. The planners had left the implementation of their carefully articulated scheme in the hands of the local landlords, who were presumed to have an interest in settling their estates. Most of these who were concerned to become undertakers were the least suited to carrying out the scheme. However, some had fled from Scotland or England encumbered by debts. A few had religious reasons for going to Ireland, such as the Scottish Catholic Earls of Abercorn and their followers in the Strabane Barnkley. Others sought rapid social advancement and hence did not have the required capital to invest in their lands. As Lord Deputy Chancellor observed of the settlers, those for England are for the most part plain country gentlemen. If they have any money, they keep it close or hitherto they have dispersed little. The Scots, with the greater part and better accomplishment, but maybe with less money in these purses. These financial difficulties meant that many undertakers failed to fulfill the terms of their grants. The 1619 plantation survey noted that 39 of the 164 estates had no castles. The best and shrewd undertakers being the greatest offenders. Migration to Ulster fell far short of the intended level. In the distant North America, attracted more settlers than Ireland did. By 1630, there may only have been about 16,000 Scottish settlers in Ulster, and rather fewer of English origin. Scottish migration to Ulster, mainly from Western Scotland, was less than to Poland or Saskatchewan, which is in Canada. The normal destination for those of the East Coast in the kingdom. Many of those Ulster settlers clustered near ports, failing to venture far from the point of entry and leaving the remoter areas of the plantation almost untouched. By failing to venture far from the point of entry and leaving the remote areas of the plantation almost untouched by the settlement, as a result, Ulster undertakers were kept native Irish tenants on their lands, often paying substantial rents. This left newcomers open to confiscation of their estates by the Crown for breach of conditions of the plantation. Hence, a number of the Ulster landowners associated themselves with the mainly Old English attempt to secure land. tenure in the graces of the late 1920s, attempts to regulate the social structure of Ulster in the plantation scheme fell victim to the Undertaker's drive to optimise the profit rather than create social order. This is not an entirely negative one. By 1620, most of the major participants in the reorganisation of Ulster after the flight of the Earls had departed the political stage. Hugh O'Neill, Earl of Tyrone, died in Rome in 1616. Arthur Chichester left the Irish political stage in 1615. Sir John Davis returned to England in 1619, dying shortly after. Yet the Ulster plantation scheme outlasted their deaths by over 20 years. What is remarkable is how little overt antagonism it created. By 1630, settlers felt themselves sufficiently secure to begin building undefended houses with large windows. Arms and munitions were less common in Ulster in the 1630s than they had been 15 years earlier. What is perhaps most telling is that many of the organisers of the 1641 Rising, including Sir Hugh Pelham, Lord O'Neill, Lord Maguire, and various other writers, had not lost land during the plantation, but instead benefited from the plantation scheme. And that, my friends, is why I'm telling you that this idea of the plantation is a fucking myth. It's not the blight upon the land that we were told it was. It didn't involve as large a number of people were told it was, and it definitely did not cause a change in how Ulster was. How Ulster is. You missed the best bits. This is getting into more recent squabbles, although it may be more important to the bullshit that is presented these days. Well, Polly, my point was to go through the plantation. Uh, and I think from my timelines, uh, you can agree that, for one thing, Ireland was not always a Celtic country, that the arrival of British people in Ireland was a natural progression. The plantation and also the people who organised returning to England makes you die not long after. Oh shit. Uh, my point is that the point they wanted to make out of all this and what people get out of it was Ireland was not traditionally a Celtic country. There's Celts here that are still here, but they were not here for long before the plantation. Uh, the proper Indigenous people had more in common with the people who were planted than they did with the Celts. Those two factions were divided and always divided. Sorry, Billy. Is John in the chat? If John can see me commenting in the live stream chat replay, he can block me then unblock me. Did John Davison arrive in? Or am I getting into something that you are indeed a wasp? All right, no, that's okay. Just curious, but thank you, October, and it's a duck. Uh, so the point I was wanting to make was, from my timelines, the so-called plantation didn't make much of a difference to uh, life in Ulster. Wasn't really a plantation, and the people who are using that term to describe that it's similar. Uh, I don't know. I think she may not be. Yeah, she's definitely a field marshal. And the last thing I want to bring up is how people in Ireland feel about people who are British in any part of the island. And whenever they are talking about a plantation, they don't just mean the recent settlers that they've got coming in, but they also mean you. So let's have a look at this. Oh, that's going to need a bit of zoom each. Right. This is the Irish News, and it's Planter still the fitting name. Samuel Morrison, 3rd of June, referred to Ian Knox's cartoon that mocked the Royalists and Unionists who took offence to the term planters. Yes, we do take offence to that term, although we are still called it. Samuel then follows up with his own offensive language, whereby he claims that Nigel Tate not to know what Hewitt meant when he used the word planter to describe himself. He's talking about Samuel Hewitt, the poet, or who, or fucking James Hewitt, who described himself as a planter in one of his poems. Samuel seems not to want to portray himself as his fellow unionist who made the remark to him in his past as intellectually superior on the subject of Hewitt. To reinforce this idea, he tells us, Hewitt's poems occupy a space in my bookcase. It infers that some nationalists will have copies of the Fenian Clydesdale and will feel the same way about these copies as he does about Hewitt's poems, rather than feeling the way he does about the poems. I think he has given us a snapshot into the delusion of superiority that still pervade some of the more intellectual unionist circles today. It is a shame he didn't enlighten us all as to the correct interpretation of Hewitt's self-description of the term planter. I understand Samuel's desire to quash any problems that can have occurred from people being regarded as or feeling as if they are blue ends and outsiders because they class the British people in Ireland as blue ends and outsiders. But this shouldn't be to the point of denying reality. There was a large scale plantation and colonisation by imperialistic projects by peoples from outside of Ireland, by those who were other. This was not a natural migration by those seeking new opportunities, unemployed, unowned, unpeopled lands, nor was it a migration where they sought to work with the people who were native to the land to enhance the quality of life, of prosperity of all. The fucking Celts were not native to the land. They invaded a settled land in 250 BC, you fucking lunatic. Instead, they came here to dispossess those who had ownerships of the lands, and to enslave and abuse and enforce foreign rule and Anglo cultural and religious domination through violent military oppression and racist sectarian administration. In doing so over the generations, they have actively sought to other themselves, precisely in order to maintain their position of privilege, strength, and domination. They hope to bully and intimidate and bribe the people of Ireland into accepting the English crown. We covered this way long before any plantations. The Irish people took on took allegiance to the crown and the government as their master. But they could never extinguish the flame of Irish distinct nationhood. There isn't one. The spirit and pride of the Irish nation among the people is felt too keenly with their awareness of our rich and ancient history, going back to, no, not thousands of years, going back to 250 BC. Sadly, most of the descendants of those original planters in the 6 counties still under foreign rule have continued to maintain this historical injustice and seek to other themselves. Hewitt felt for those of the planter community had worked and toiled and been part of this land for long enough to have earned the right to be regarded as native. I agree, and I'm sure so do 90% of nationalists and Republicans, which is why there hasn't been a desire to mimic the South Africans and Zimbabweans who have been taking farmed land by force of the planter stock. What was that 40 years of violence? Could you haven't been trying to put people out? No. Haven't been trying ethnic cleansing? No. Yeah, you fucking have. But being now native to Ireland doesn't give them the right to insist on maintaining the historic injustice of British rule here. Hewitt recognised that this was a tradition of the community that he came from, and sadly, while they seek to maintain the same project as their forefathers, the implanters is still the fitting name. It will be a great day when those formerly of the planter stock and those of the Gaelic and other communities in Ireland are all working together as one, making amends for the mistakes of the past with pride in the part they are playing to strengthen Irish nationhood and making it a nation that continues to punch above its weight and all bullshit. Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. So, what I will say to you, whenever you're talking about people from down south, whenever they are whenever they are talking about stop the plantation, if you're English, Scottish, Welsh, or Northern Irish, anyway British, they're talking about you too. Anglo, sleep well, chum. Right, I'm checking through the chat. Me get spicy? Never. No, we should not be more worried about planters from other things because here's the thing, mate. They don't want me here. They want the British people in Northern Ireland out, and they will not be happy until we're gone. That's my biggest worry. They're the problem. They're still calling us planters. And I have explained that my people have been here for thousands of years before their people, yet they call us planters. They're the invaders, we're not. That makes it the idea notion of a plantation an absolute fucking joke. It's not correct. At very most, what you have is British people coming over to assist their kith and kin when they have been uh, attacked by the invaders. Oh, holy fuck. Now I have lost the link. Uh, talk among yourselves for a moment. I know where I want reasons. One second. Right. Aha. Here we go. Now, we're going to move from this onto our strange sport. And if you want to start, if you want to make a start getting your guesses what today's strange sport could possibly be, I'm getting it. I get this the right. Oh no. Right, that's what I wanted. And yep, back to StreamYard. Right. Here we go. Let's see what the guesses are like. Trampoline volleyball? No. Underwater rugby? No. Road luge? No. Not lacrosse. There's going to be some canoeing going on. But what type of canoeing? What type of canoeing could this madness be? Downhill snow canoeing.
And that's your fun period.
There you go. That's a bit of downhill canoeing. I have stuck the link in the chat. If anybody wants to jump in for a quick chat, feel free to do so. Those pesky nationalists want everyone but the British and the NI. Here's the problem. See, with the people down south that have suddenly suddenly standing up for themselves. If they wanted to unite with the British people, they would not be using the term plantation. And as much as you see, as much as you do see them, we tend to see quite a lot of Irish protests against migration, and that's all well and good. And it seems like the whole population is against migration because of what you see. But there's also this. Sure. Yeah. Yeah, so there's quite the liberal mob there. Right. I've stuck the link in the chat again, and we've done like 2 hours 10 on, and unless some yeah, their version of history doesn't doesn't compete. Don't be looking for sense from these people, because you ain't getting any. No, is it? I got 2 of those. 1 second. Here we go. Exiles then. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, 42. How are you?
Not too bad. How's yourself?
Not bad. I was really enjoying that stream about the history of your little country. It's really fascinating.
Yes. Well, it's what beggars belief is there's if you listen to mainstream history, the history of Northern Ireland begins 800 years ago with a plantation.
Yeah.
It ignores the fact. It ignores the vast majority of it.
Exactly. Yeah, it just basically cherry picks the points that they want to do. They never tell you that those Celts were not the natives to Ireland. There was people before that. Am I right?
Yeah, but
yeah.
I mean, they don't even start whenever the Celts arrive. They start about 1600s with the Plantation of Ireland.
Exactly. It's as if the English just appeared there and then started treating everybody like shit, which we know is a total lie. But what we do also know is a lot of people migrated from Ireland over to Scotland, especially when you focus on that point of the same style of those stone structures, the pile of rocks. I think it's called a dolmen.
Yeah, those burial mounds, but they're right throughout the whole of Britain.
Exactly.
the Celts didn't arrive until the Celts arrived in Britain and Ireland roughly the same time. I think they might have been on mainland Britain a little bit before here, or vice versa. I'm not sure, but they did not arrive into a vast, unsettled wilderness. They arrived into a settled land, and
Exactly.
nobody can figure out why the fuck we've got defensive ramparts that weren't needed at any time before appear not long after the Celts arrive. You know,
Well, that can only suggest that they were warring tribes warring with one another. They were not all coexisting peacefully.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, the fact that the academics can't figure that out, they don't know what the defensive ramparts were for. Maybe some mythical pig made them. Maybe they were to, maybe they were to make stop sheep getting into the next farm. You know.
Yeah. That bit when you earlier on when you said from teacher to pig, I had to laugh at that because it was just funny the way it jumped to an animal. That was hilarious.
Yeah, it's anything apart from a defensive fucking rampart around the borders of Ulster. It's every
I know.
the history. I believe that my opinion that people arrived here from Scotland over the years. The archaeology is there for it, that people were going back and forward and mixing with the Scottish and the British people, that they come over and all the archaeology mates. Then we have the Celts arrive. I'm not disagreeing that they arrived. And then not long after that, we have Vikings come in, and then we have British people coming over. And to my mind, the British people come over to help their kith and kin, who were the same as them, that were being trampled on by the Celts.
Yeah, they came basically as to reinforce and protect their own people. Yeah. But the other thing as well, Christianity wasn't native to Ireland. That was brought to Ireland. But you always get people saying, oh, the Irish have always been Catholic. I said, no, they haven't. I even said this years ago. They were pagan like Scots, and eventually Christianity was introduced and it was assimilated throughout the whole place, the whole region.
Do these people think that there was Christianity before Christ?
Exactly. It just kind of makes you laugh. But one thing it did come later, obviously Protestantism came after Catholicism in Ireland. Catholicism was already established, but that was true.
Whenever Christianity came, there was Catholicism. That was it. That was the whole 9 yards.
Right.
The Church of Rome. The Church of Rome was invented AD 325. They had a council at Nicaea where they sat around and organised how the religion was going to work, set on all the ground rules so it would be uniform across the place. And then what was it, 15 something, we had the Reformation. What happened was King Henry VIII wanted a divorce. The Pope wouldn't give him one. As for the divorce, the Pope said no. He went with Lutheranism and created the Church of England. And then we split into Protestants and Catholics.
Yeah. Well, it's the same in Scotland. We have the Church of Scotland again. We had our Reformation roughly around the same time it was happening down south.
Was exactly the same time. It's all the one Reformation.
Okay, but it's just the ideology spread north. I was aware of that. That's how it came. And now there's Church of Scotland, and you've got something called the Wee Free Churches, but you find them mostly on the islands of Scotland. They're just a group within themselves, but they're basically a Protestant faith group. Yeah,
they are. Well, what it was, it's split between Protestantism and Catholicism, and then Protestantism has split several times and created different forms of the same religion.
Yeah, the United Frees, that's what they're called, the United Free Church of Scotland. Do you have them in Ulster as well, the United Frees?
We have Oh God, we have many churches. We have with Free Presbyterians. We have I wouldn't even hazard a guess. I think the United Free Church of Scotland will be different to the Free Presbyterians, but
so
basically, every time you get a bunch of people, somebody wants to be a boss of something, and they can't be a boss of everything, so start their own.
that's it. That's like it. It's just people never get along, and then they break up, and then they make their own little divisions, and then they go along those lines with minor alterations, and then hey presto, you have a new ideology within the same religion. Yeah, a little bit similar to that, just a wee bit different to thing, but they claim then to be of the same religion, just slightly different. It's like in Catholicism, you've got the Jesuits, and then you've got the Roman Catholics. Yeah.
But as I say, it's the same as over in Holland. Not long after this time we're talking about, King William of Orange comes over. We'll have the Williamite Wars, and then he becomes the King of England. Well, actually, England, Ireland, and Scotland, because we'd already had the Act of Union by then. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks to William, the Battle of the Boyne took place, and then he became the king of all the countries. In 1707, actually, was the Act of Union, but 1603 was the Union of Crowns. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Officially.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the Battle of Boyne was not the decisive battle.
Was it not?
No.
Oh,
right.
I thought
Okay.
it was.
Right. There was a shift in the calendar date at once where we went to the Gregorian calendar, and the 12th of July, 1691, in the old calendar was the Battle of Acre, which was the decisive one the year after. The two battles are very similar.
Okay.
But by the time the Gregorian calendar came about and all the dates shifted, the Orange Order had already been parading on the 12th of July to celebrate the Battle of Acre. And by fluke, whenever everything moved by 12 days, the Battle of the Boyne, which had been on the 1st of July, became on the 12th of July. And they were like, well, fuck, we have our parades on the 12th of July. So instead of parading to commemorate the Battle of Acre, which happened the year after, we'll keep our parade date the same, but we'll do it to celebrate the Battle of the Boyne.
Okay. Well, whenever I've seen the order going by in the marches, on their banners, they always just have William on horseback with celebrating Battle of the Boyne, 1690. I didn't know about the other bar.
Yep. There. I did a stream. I did a stream around about the 12th of July last year. It'll be around that. Probably called the Battle of Boyne stream or something like that, where I went through the four Williamite wars: Boyne, Acre, Londonderry, and Enniskillen, mapped out. Whenever William arrived in Ulster, they lit the bonfires everywhere he went to show that he was now in Ireland. And the other thing is, like, between the plantation in 1609 and 16, you're not talking a very long period of time.
No.
But it's not enough time for a plantation to change the makeup of the place.
Exactly.
But we still had a hell of a lot of Protestants and Unionists that were loyal to the king.
Yes, of course. Well, I do know that 1688 was the start of what they call the Glorious Revolution, and that effeminate plonker James fled to France, and it made it easier for William just to arrive in Carrickfergus, work his way through Drogheda, work his way to the Boyne, and then subsequently the rest of them.
Before that, James had come back. James went to France. Then he came back to Ireland, was
Okay.
marching up through Ireland, got as far as Londonderry, and had the doors of the walled city in Londonderry slammed in his face, which created the siege of Derry.
Okay.
Right, there was a siege there, went on for about 9 months, and then William arrived in Carrickfergus, worked his way down to Londonderry. Ship came up with foil, broke the boom that was blockading the city, and they relieved the city, the siege of Derry. Then James fucked off down south, got his ass handed to him at the Boyne in 1690, and then at Acre in 1691, fled over to France. And those people, I believe, eventually, no, I think it was a different bunch, became the French Canadians in Quebec. But the French Canadians in Quebec had been in Ireland, got kicked out because they couldn't get on with anybody there. Then got kicked out of France and went to Quebec because nobody could get on with them there. And now they're in Canada, and nobody can get on with them in Canada.
Yeah, they're called Quebecois. Yeah, they're a bit of a bizarre bunch. Yeah, the thing is, even when they speak French, their French is from 300 years ago or more, and people in metropolitan France have told me they find it difficult to understand them. They know that they're speaking French, but they're speaking in a way that's so wrong and so it's just graphic. Everything is all mixed depicted.
By an amazing coincidence. See the Irish that Sinn Féin speak?
Yeah.
Well, there are indeed down at the very tip of Ireland and sort of around there. They have these areas that are Gaelic, I think the pronunciation is, but they've been speaking Gaelic from. They never converted to English, right? And whenever Sinn Féin stand up in the Parliament and blather in their Irish, the Gaelic people stand up after them and say, "We have no idea what you're saying."
Well, that's because it's all, well, they call it leprechaun Irish. It's all modernized, made up to promote a heritage thing. Yeah.
It was invented in 1892.
Yeah, it's basically a recreation to try and revive. They did the same in Scotland when kilts were banned, and after the proscription, a lot of tartans had been lost through the ban, and so people designed their own patterns. And when Gaelic started to get its revival, the Scottish Gaelic, a lot of the language had been lost, so they had to make up new words and expressions, but it's like the Quebecois, it's all grammatically incorrect, the modern equivalent of the old way. So
I bet you half of it. I bet you half of the Scottish is Welsh.
Probably is, or heavily borrowed from the Irish as well, because there's many words which are very similar.
Right. See, whenever Christianity came in, to Britain, there was pre-Council of Nicaea or post-Council of Nicaea. There was a decision made that you would get your festaments in Latin, your sermon in English, because across Britain there was something like 19 different dialects, and they decided, right, the most common one's Angle, so we're going to teach all our priests Angle. So if you want to communicate with the church, you're going to need to learn that. And everywhere apart from Wales, they took that on. And the Welsh were that stubborn that the chapel decided that they would grant a Bible and a Book of Common Prayer in Welsh.
That's correct, yeah.
They kept their language right the way through. So whenever Irish was being reinvented and they were short of words, they borrowed quite a lot of them from Wales. So if the Scottish have borrowed from the Irish, they've probably got Welsh.
Could be. Well, the Scottish revival started in between the the 1780s to 1800, when all things Scottish were the rage of the day, and so many of the words and the languages were seeing a boost in popularity, as well as Highland national dress with many tartan patterns which didn't exist at the time, but now they're as standard and accepted, but they were obviously not traditional of the time when before they were banned in 1746. But that's
Yeah,
like everything, it just gets reinvented, and then eventually nobody knows what's original anymore.
yes, that is a fucking large scale problem.
Yeah, because we're talking about a period, illiterate societies, they didn't write things down. Vast majority of the Scots were illiterate. They just passed things orally. They did not have a system or the ability to write. Only the nobility could read and write, but your average Scotsman could not read or write. He just remembered, and he just passed things down orally as he had been taught by his parents, and then subsequently through the generations. It's pre-literate societies.
Right, hold on, I'm on to SS. So William fucked up a possible kingdom with the Northern Sea nations. Well, I'm not exactly sure who all the Northern Sea nations encompasses, but there has always been problems with France and England. Uh, whenever William came over, that was officially like a not a union, but an alliance between Holland and England. The countries in Europe have had alliances together, but not until NATO did they have one where they were all in the one alliance. Uh, and I don't think that has served us well, because I think the fact that in Europe we always had people with dissent has kept us on a slightly better path than the one we're on now.
Mm-hmm. 42, you probably already know this, but did you know that the Williamite army consisted of many nationalities throughout
Yeah.
Europe, including Huguenots from France? But
Oh, see that giant shrine that was showed earlier?
mm-hmm.
There is a Church of Ireland graveyard beside it, and in that graveyard there's a lot of Huguenots are buried.
Yeah. They sought sanctuary in England, Scotland, and Ireland from
Yeah.
massacres. A lot were massacred in St Bartholomew's Day, but they made a bulk of William's army, as well as Scots and even Welsh, some Germans and English
Yeah.
from everywhere. Basically, all the Protestants.
Yes. There was there was Protestant Catholic wars going about all over the place. Right. Oh. Let's see. We are now on 2.5 hours, and it's just after 1. I am thinking about calling this a day. But have you anything else that's bucking on your mind you really want to talk about?
No, that was it. I just wanted to say I enjoyed tonight's stream. It's really mind-opening.
Thank you very much. I will say that it's good to have straight and honest feedback, because you sit here, you do this, you look everything up, and you don't always know whether or not what you're meaning to get across does come across. It's been a lot of comments that I've had that have been quite positive, and you come on and have a talk. So I'm quite pleased that I've actually got this at least mostly right.
Well, it's more that, I certainly learned quite a lot tonight. I thought I knew some, but obviously I learned some new things, and I'm going to listen back to this stream in the next few days and also do some reading into what you've been talking about tonight.
Yeah, excellent. And the links for all the stuff that I put up, as always, are in the description.
Yeah.
Like I said, Newgrange, Giant Shrine, whatnot. The wee history book I used because the timelines I worked them out myself, because I looked up the dates and things that happened, what I thought was important. But but the wee book that I used, the short history of Ireland. Oh fuck, where was that? I was going to get the name of the book, but I have said it somewhere.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
earlier
put it
on,
away.
you mentioned Brian Boru. Yeah, that instantly made me think there's a set of bagpipes called the Brian Boru bagpipes. They were invented in Ireland in the late 1800s,
Yeah.
but they became obsolete because they were not practical because they've got keys on the chanter, and it was difficult for pipers to use them. So they switched back to the traditional chanter. Oh.
Yeah. Oh fuck. There I tried to learn how to play bagpipes.
I I've got a practice chanter. I mean, I don't have a set of pipes anymore, but unless you practice regular, it can be really hard on your mouth and on your diaphragm. Let me tell you.
It's not even that. My musical coordination is shit. I can play the stereo and that is it. I've tried to learn the flute, couldn't get a fucking noise out of it. Tried to learn bagpipes, tried to learn to play the drums, fucking not working. I'm just not musical at all.
Okay. Were you in a lodge when you're in the
Yeah.
past? That's
Yeah,
what I thought. Yeah.
I was in a lodge. I ended up not in a lodge for very many reasons. It's just the way my life went. And my beliefs currently would be more pagan than Protestant, and the Orange Order is a Protestant organization.
Yeah.
And I don't get me wrong, if I really wanted to get into a lodge, I could get myself into one and fudge what I need to fudge, but I'm not really a fudge type person.
No.
You know, and I would don't you know, I personally I class myself as a unionist and a loyalist. Pro the crown, loyal to the crown, pro union, but not so much a Protestant, and more Druid.
Yeah. Well, I am a Protestant, but I'm also identify as a unionist, but I just always believe loyalism is more for people in Northern Ireland. So for me to call myself a loyalist, some people might get the wrong idea about
Well,
that. So I'd say I'm a unionist.
well, you
If you know.
see, what tends to happen is people in England, Scotland, and Wales who what loyalist means is loyal to the crown.
Yeah, I
Right?
understand that.
Like,
People don't
you
think
know,
that. They assume the worst.
England, Scotland, and Wales tend to use the term royalist
Yeah.
as opposed to loyalist. It all gets a bit nitpicky.
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to look up something for an outro. What would
I
be a
know. No, some about the Orange Order. No, I there was a time years ago I had some mates in the local one, and they were trying to persuade me to join. But at the time, I had no interest in joining any organization. I was in the Scouts when I was a child, and that was just a bit of a nightmare. I didn't like it, so I didn't really want to join any other organizations because I like to just be a free person. But I always say it's good to know people in these places. But joining it, I don't think I ever would join any of them. No, that's just me.
yeah.
All right.
Right.
Okay. Return.
Right.
It's 1:10, and I'm
Yep.
actually need to go to the little boys' room. So
Right.
if you don't mind, I'm just going to
No,
jump out.
yes, you jump out. I've got the outro cleaned up. Thank you very much for coming on, Axel. It's been a pleasure as always.
You're welcome. Always a pleasure to come
Right.
and chat with you, Af.
Catch you next time.
Right. Catch you later. Have a good one. Bye.
Okay. Here we go. We're going with the Alex Jones Gay Frog song, and I will put your comments up on the screen as always. What the hell? Right.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay. Do you understand that? Turn the friggin' frogs gay. Serious crap. Gay. Frogs, friggin' frogs. It's not funny. I'm gonna say it real slow for you. Gay. Frogs. Won't you fight for your life? Gay. Frogs, friggin' frogs. I don't like a frog. Gay. Friggin' frogs. Frogs. Friggin' frog crap. Won't you fight the frogs? It's not funny. I'm gonna say it real slow for you. Frogs. Place point.
Billy, I'm not even getting into that because it's too late. Anyway, I've been 42. You lot in the chat have, as always, been fucking amazing. Good night, God bless, and we'll see you all next week. I'm out of here. Gone. Goodbye.